Hi, everybody. Good morning and welcome. My name is Phil Pengrazio. I'm the CEO of Ability 360, and I'm going to be the host MC this morning. Again, just wanted to welcome you all to our Americans with Disabilities Act ADA 30th anniversary, framing our future in a COVID-19 world. I kind of suspect that when we all woke up on January 1st, 2020, and we were entering this new decade that we started thinking about how were we going to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the ADA. I'm sure we were all thinking that we were going to get a ballroom down at the Grand Hyatt, and we were going to get all dressed up and have a big party and celebrate this. And well, that didn't happen. And what has happened and kind of what we're doing today is just really transformative. We're now, we're more than 4 months into this emergency declaration in our state and across the country and the world, really, because of COVID. So it's changed everything. But we're glad we still can celebrate the 30th anniversary of the ADA today. I want to make a couple quick thank yous to the organizations that help bring this celebration today to all of us. Arizona Developmental Disabilities Planning Council, Institute for Human Development, the Arc of Arizona, Arizona Center for Disability Law, Ability 360, Arizona Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, Native American Disability Law Center, City of Tempe Government, and the Arizona ADA Coordinators Coalition. So I want to thank all of those great organizations for making this happen today. I also want to recognize and welcome a few people that are here from our Arizona congressional delegation, from Congresswoman Debbie Lesko's office. Giselle Norberg is with us. From Senator Kirsten Sinema's office, we have Joe Russell. And from the office of Senator Martha McSally, we have Matthew Shimo. Sorry, Matthew, if I mispronounced your last name. So we welcome all of you with us here today as well. So I'm going to turn it over to our welcoming opening remarks speaker, Representative Jennifer Longden, to kind of give us some, set the stage for this event this morning. And with that, Representative Longden, we thank you so much for being here. The stage is yours.
Well, thank you, Phil. It's truly my absolute honor and pleasure to be here with so many friends today. And I'm grateful to the organizations that helped organize this particular event. Happy ADA 30th anniversary, and I'm glad to be celebrating it with all of you. I came into this movement midway through from where we are right now. For those of you that can't see me, I was paralyzed 16 years ago, and I'm a full-time wheelchair user. And at the time of my injury, I experienced what I think many people do when they acquire disability or suddenly it's in their face. I was shocked. I knew that we had the Americans with Disabilities Act, but I didn't recognize that it hadn't fixed all of the problems that I was still going to encounter, from inaccessible restrooms and inaccessible storefronts, inability to get seated at large events, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I found that I needed to join the fight, and I have. But one of the things that I have learned over these years, I've been able to take advantage of the learnings of those that were there in the beginning, folks like Phil and many of the others on this call. And Justin Dart is certainly one of my heroes in this particular movement. So I brought up a couple of passages from some of the speeches that he's given. And if you're not familiar with Justin Dart, please do. I mean, he's a Google search away, and his speeches are all phenomenal. So I want to start with this to frame what we're looking at today. The ADA is an absolutely essential legal and educational tool to achieve equality and to achieve employment. But the ADA is not equality, and it's not employment. And as an aside, boy, don't we all know that. The ADA is a promise to be kept. And what is that promise? For whatever the law says legally, the clear promise of the ADA is that all people with disabilities will be fully equal, fully productive, fully prosperous, and fully welcome participants in the mainstream. Think about that for a minute. How often do you feel fully productive, fully equal, and fully welcome? Keeping the promise of the ADA is not going to be easy. Justin Dart was right about that. So as I said, I came into this movement 16 years ago when I acquired my own disability, and it's been a steep learning curve. And now I sit as the first elected wheelchair user in the Arizona Legislature. And all of these years, and all of the times that we have turned over 90 legislators at a time, 30 in the Senate and 60 in the House, we have not elected, until my election, an individual with a disability like mine. How could that have happened in all of these years? Upon being elected, I learned that this building that was built in 1960, remember, at the time of my election, the ADA had existed for 28 years. And at the time of my election to serve in the Arizona House of Representatives, there was a single bathroom stall in the entire building that I could use out of 26 toilets available for women, one. And it was on the ground floor. So if I were on the floor, which is on the second floor, if I was there voting, I couldn't dash out as legislators do in between votes to use the restroom. I had to wait for an elevator to take me down to the first floor, to wait and see if someone was in that particular stall, wait for my turn to use it and take an elevator back. It's a great way to miss a vote. So upon my election, the administration of the Arizona House of Representatives, along with leadership, looked around and recognized that they had not yet upgraded the building to be accessible to someone with physical disabilities like mine. 2 years prior, for Representative Alston's advocacy, they added a hearing loop so that our deaf and community members who are hard of hearing could use hearing aids and cochlear implants with the hearing loop. So in the interim between my being elected and my being sworn in, they added door openers. They added a second wheelchair accessible restroom right outside of the place that we vote. So in my first few weeks of being an elected official, I increased the number of wheelchair accessible toilets by 100%. Woohoo! Now, toilets don't sound all that sexy when it comes to advocacy, unless you're looking to find an opportunity to use a restroom and can't. In the interim, between my first session and second session, building administration and leadership went through the building and added even more handrails, made sure that there was at least one accessible toilet on every floor. So there's one on all 4 floors. made sure that we added door openers everywhere that we needed to, and took a look around the building. So this is a great lesson in understanding that representation matters. Seeing ourselves in the mainstream is important, whether that's in a TV commercial, whether that's in a forward-facing job at a restaurant or a place of business, or whether it's in our elected officials. We need to make sure that we are seeing ourselves represented in the community. And it's up to us to make sure that this promise of the ADA is kept. And Justin Dart was absolutely right. It has not been easy, because if it was easy, it'd be done. We have dedicated folks like Phil and many of the people on this call who've been working on this issue for these entire 30 years and even before that, to create an equitable and inclusive environment for all of us. So if it were easy, it would all be done by now. And the number of times that I go into a public space and find that I can't get in the door, or I can't move around the space, that I can't access the stage where I'm supposed to speak because it's only one step, or that ASL interpreters haven't been provided to translate for these important words that are going to be said by all of the folks who are speaking at a particular event. We need to remain vigilant to make sure that these promises are kept. So our advocacy, simply by showing up, is effective, impactful, and important. So continue to do that. Make sure that you're speaking out. When you see improper or a lack of characterization of people with disabilities in the media, whether that's in the fictional programs that you watch, or whether it's the way that we are portrayed in the news media, make sure you speak up. When you see that we're not represented in important decision-making processes, when decisions are being made, for example, about public transportation like light rail. When the light rail system was built, Ability 360 wasn't included in parceling out the stops. And Ability 360 did a great deal of advocacy with then Congressman Ed Pastor for federal funds, with then Mayor Greg Stanton, who is now Congressman Stanton, with city officials and federal officials to make sure that that stop was created, and created history by creating the first ever infill stop done anywhere in the nation on a light rail system. And now everyone can enjoy the amenities at Ability 360 because that public transportation stop has been added. So don't take no for an answer. Don't take, well, we've already done it, and this is the way it's always going to be. Don't take, this place is grandfathered, so we can't do that, for an answer. Show your might, show your power, show your economic power, show your legislative power by voting and by keeping your elected officials accountable. Currently, we're talking about framing the future in a world of COVID. Well, as Phil said, we didn't expect that we would be here. And now that the business community has created these telecommuting options for their workforce to keep them safe, many disability advocates are going, hey, wait, we've been asking for this accommodation for decades, and we've been told, no, it's not possible for our workforce to be productive and creative if they're working at home on a computer in their own environment. And look what COVID has taught us, that some of the accommodations that we as a community have been asking for decades are not only possible, but prove to be fruitful, productive, and profitable for organizations. So we're going to work on keeping those in place. The other thing that we're seeing in this new COVID world is a new interest in using the ADA, but it comes from individuals who are looking to use it the same way they've used the ADA to say that their pet is a service animal so that they can take Fido with them into a restaurant even when their pet misbehaves, and casts our service dogs and our adaptive devices in a bad light. There are individuals who are now using their sudden disability to avoid wearing masks in public, to avoid this shared public health need that we have. And so now we're teaching them about reasonable accommodations. How many of us have dealt with reasonable accommodations? So it's our opportunity to help educate the public on not only what the ADA does, but how it can be used reasonably to include everyone. So as you're moving forward today, and as you're moving forward into this new year and into this new era that includes not only a deeper awareness of the ADA, but now in this COVID world, I invite you to look around at all of the places where we now have inclusion and the places where we're still lacking our civil rights. And look beyond your own disability or your own disability experience. I live in a world that I navigate through a wheelchair, but it's also part of my responsibility to be aware of how individuals with other types of disabilities also encounter the world. So when I can advocate for sensory disabilities, when I can advocate for cognitive disabilities or whatever other types of disabilities that I might need to be advocating for, it's important that we act as allies. I want you to remember that generations of dreamers and believers in equity and justice have worked and risked and sacrificed of themselves to create this community. And now it is yours to continue to build and improve and push further. Another one of my heroes has just passed away, John Lewis. And I've had the opportunity to meet him twice. And we were together in September in DC. And I remember he put his hands on both of my shoulders because I told him I was tired. I told him that disability advocacy was hard because so many other civil rights movements were asking us to please be quiet, to not co-opt their moment for our cause, that we would get our turn. Congressman Lewis put his hands on both of my shoulders and looked me in the eyes with that fire and told me that it's our job to shout it from the rooftops, that equity is equity. And he did remind me that it's our job to create good trouble. So I want to leave you with one more moment, if I can, from oh, and it looks like I've lost it. So I want to leave you with one more moment from Justin Dart. The ADA is only the beginning. It's not a solution. It's an essential foundation on which solutions will be constructed. So I invite you all to get out your construction tools and continue to build this just and equitable and inclusive world that we all want to live on and that we all need to wedge ourselves into, because no time in the history of this world have civil rights been simply given. They've been demanded and earned, and we have more than earned our civil rights. And we're going to demand them, and we're going to continue speaking our truth, continue causing our good trouble, And one accommodation at a time, we're going to build a world that works for everyone. So I hope you all have a great day today. And I thank you for allowing me this opportunity to be with you. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Representative Longden. So appreciate your message this morning. Fabulous. And we thank you for your vision and your leadership and your service as one of our legislators. You know, you truly epitomize everything we've been talking about for decades, for people with disabilities to be leaders, mentors to others with disabilities. And wow, we cannot have a better person at our state legislature working in behalf of our community, because we need that so badly. I mean, today we talk so much about diversity, and diversity is that's the new normal we're fighting for. But disability, people with disabilities need to be included in that tapestry of diversity, just as everyone else. So again, we thank you so much for your work at the legislature, and I know you're not done. Again, thank you.
Well, thank you, Phil. And let me tell you, I could sure use some help down there. So I know in this audience today are individuals who are ready to step up and run and serve at your school board level, at your city level, certainly at the state legislature. And I'm looking forward to the day that we have a governor who is out and proud with a disability, when we have another president who is, but this time, out and proud with their particular disability. And when these moments in history are taught in our classrooms, so that everyone can recognize themselves.
Thank you. Okay, so our next part of our program this morning, I'll kind of give you a little rundown. We've got several individuals, people from our disability community that have volunteered to share a little bit of their experiences and how the Americans with Disabilities Act has impacted their lives. Sarah Ruff is going to guide us through that conversation with this panel of participants. So that's the first thing we're going to do. And then after we do that, we're going to open it up to our entire group, and we'll offer some opportunities for our public that has joined us today to do the same and share some of their ADA stories and experiences. And then lastly, we will we'll have some time for JJ Rico, who is the CEO at the Arizona Center for Disability Law, to share a few of his thoughts on the future of the ADA and where we're heading and what's next on the horizon, as well as Therese Yannon, who's the executive director of the Native American Disability Law Center, and she will provide some additional comments about the future of the ADA, especially in this environment of COVID, and certainly what we've seen here in Arizona and on the Navajo reservation, especially how hard hit they have been with COVID. So, and then I'll wrap up our session later this morning. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Ruff to take us through our panel of participants. So Sarah, it is all yours.
Thank you, Phil. Hope everybody can hear me. I switched computers, but we are so excited to have our lineup for you all this morning. And so I'm just going to start calling on names of people we've connected with who are prepared to share a little bit of their story. And I'm going to call on Doris Dennison first. Doris, you are up to the plate. go ahead and unmute yourself and take it away.
Good morning, everybody. I'm sharing the computer with Therese because I have difficulties at my house. I live on the Navajo Reservation, and I live in the New Mexico area. I don't know if everybody can hear me. Okay. So when I inquired my injury, I have a spinal cord injury. So I'm a high quad. And when I got injured, I couldn't move my hands. I couldn't really do much for myself. I didn't know my, I guess my rights. And also I didn't know anything about ADA until I was living in Arizona in Tuba City for a while, and I lived in a home that didn't even have a ramp. So my husband at the time used to carry me out to the vehicle if we had to go somewhere, or he would carry me back inside and put me in my wheelchair so I can get around inside. So, but eventually our marriage fell apart, and I ended up having to move to New Mexico. And it was fortunate that I went under the care of my mother-in-law. Even though I separated from my husband, she was willing to take care of me, and things just kind of evolved from there. I got involved with the San Juan Center for Independence, whose main office is in Farmington. They were the ones that started me to, I guess, get involved. And they were the ones that taught me how to advocate for myself, what it meant. And that's when I started learning about the ADA and things like that. And then was fortunate to meet Therese when she was still with the Native DNA office. So, and that's where I learned even more. And she kind of really got involved with a lot of other stuff. And that's where I think I finally kind of wet my feet, because she was working on the Vulnerable Adult Protection Act. And I was just kind of sitting on the sideline, but she was having some problems because she was coming in as a Anglo person and trying to tell the tribe that they needed to put a law and act for vulnerable adults. And so that's when I got involved with that. But to make the jump into how I used the ADA was when I started receiving Medicaid services. And I was having trouble trying to navigate how to get my needs met through Medicaid. And so finally, my father-in-law's always like, it's just a waste of time when you're trying to talk to people over the phone, or if you want to send letters, they don't understand and they make excuses. It's better to go where they are and talk to the person in person. So I made a trip to Santa Fe. And when I got to Santa Fe, the only thing was that I couldn't get into the building. The building had a few parking spaces because I'm in a wheelchair, and everybody was using up the spaces. And then plus the door to the office that I was going to had a big heavy door with no windows, and you had to pull it open to go in. And being in the manual chair at the time, I was either I could use both hands to maneuver my chair, and hopefully somebody comes around to open the door for me so I can get in. But so finally I I got into the building and I kind of made a complaint about that. And I was told that there was some individuals that were working there that were in wheelchairs that have made a report on that. And it's been like 3 or 4 years, but nothing's have happened. So I started writing letters about it. At that time, Governor Richardson was in office. And so I wrote to him and I wrote to the health department because I thought, well, this is their office, so maybe they'll do something, but nothing really happened. So that's when I came back to Therese again and I told her, this is what I'm, trying to do, but is there any suggestions that you have? So that's when she told me to include sections from the ADA stating that this accommodation should be provided for me and stuff like that. And then we went and sent it to the DOJ, so that's when they finally answered back. And then within a couple of months, they had increased the parking spaces, and then they also redid the door where it had a window in it so that you can see if there's other people behind there or if there's another person coming up to the door. And they also put automatic door opener, so which was way much better than trying to navigate pulling a door open and maneuvering your chair. So that's how I was able to use that. And then the same thing happened with Indian Health Services. And for a long time, and Indian Health Services in Gallup, New Mexico was built a long time ago too. So, and everything in there is not, I guess, friendly to people with disabilities. So I had the same issues with doors. So with the physical therapy department, I put in a request, and after a couple of months, they did change it to where it had a automatic door. And that's where I included other people. I said that even with elderly people that are able to still walk, may have a wheelchair, and they may have an attendant who is pushing a wheelchair with them. They're usually not able to open the door and maneuver the chair in. So I included individuals that had different disabilities. And I also said that the same thing with people with visual impairment, because I said that there needs to be signage on the door so that people understand, if they're going to put a automatic door, at least they'll know that there's the handle right there. And so just things like that. So I'm still doing more with the Gallup Indian Medical Center, because there's other places that have doors, like the pharmacy is the same. There's no window, there's no way of knowing if there's somebody on the other side, because now I'm using a power chair, so I said I'm more dangerous now because I push the doors open with my chair, and if I don't see if I can't tell that there's somebody on the other side, I can hit them with the door when I push it open. And so that's still in the process. The only other problem that I had is also that I was complaining about the parking spaces, and they redid the spaces, but they took out more of the van accessible parking spaces, and they did just the regular handicap parking space. And I was like, that's not what I wanted. I said that there needs to be more better, I guess, arrangements, the way they put the parking spaces. And I know that one of the things that I was asked to share also is what needs to be improved. And to me, I think that the ADA should be upgraded where we account for more parking spaces, because there's more people that are getting older, and there's more people that have disabilities, and we're all fighting for the parking spaces.
Absolutely, Doris. I totally echo that. Thank you so much for sharing your story. We're going to have to move on, but I know everybody on this call was so excited to hear about what's been going on and how you're fighting for change in New Mexico. Our next speaker is going to be Marcos Castillo from Phoenix. Marcos, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Oh, there we go. I knew that spasm was going to kick in as soon as I try to log on. Just a second. Thank you, guys. So, as you might be able to tell, I am in bed recovering from a flap surgery. So, there we go. Okay. Hi, my name is Marcos Castillo. So, I'm originally from Yuma, Arizona, and my ADA story actually goes back to when I was about 13 years old. I didn't have my accident until I was 18, but when I was 13 years old, we moved into a housing projects in Yuma, Arizona, and I didn't find out until years later that the housing authority of the city of Yuma had offered us the last spot that they had, and it actually was the accessible housing in the projects, in the housing unit that we were in. And I didn't know until other friends started visiting my house and I started visiting their house. I had a wider door, we had levers, we had a higher a bathroom. Our bathroom was really big, and theirs were smaller. We had a bigger sink, we had a little bit of a tilted mirror. Like we loved our house because it was different than everybody else's. It was accessible, and it made it to where we were able to live there, obviously. Now looking back at it, it didn't make sense why we were able to keep it for so long if there are people in Yuma who needed accessible housing. But we were able to benefit from that. So years later, when I was 18, and I moved up to Phoenix in great deal because of ABLE at the time, Arizona Bridge Independent Living, now Ability 360, started seeing these things that I didn't necessarily grow up with in a small town and in a Mexican American community where things are just culturally different. Obviously, since then, I have benefited greatly from everything in the American with Disabilities Act. But one of the things that I've noticed throughout the years is it gives you a lot of protections in employment and in barriers, physical barriers, but it doesn't really put you at the same level as able-bodied people with things that are a little bit more, you would consider a little bit more social. I wouldn't necessarily consider them social, but institutions, and I've spoken to people on this panel about this, such as marriage, and the fact that, yes, we can legally get married, but we lose benefits because of it. It just seems like it's things that kind of force us into poverty, that force us to stay below that, $2,000 level that Social Security and Medicaid and Access that they try to keep you to. I don't think that people understand the level of the shadow that you end up living in when I have a girlfriend that I have to call a girlfriend after 17 years of living together and raising 3 kids. The verbiage when I tell someone she's my girlfriend instead of telling them she's my wife, or her referring to me as my husband, puts you in the mindset of you're not really part of society. So I know it's very aspirational, but I would like to see the ADA change in aspects of things that are going to bring you into a different tax bracket because people use the institution of marriage as a way to, it benefits you, you know, in certain financial areas. And it really brought it to light with COVID when I was in the hospital, and obviously you can't have visitors, but they were making exceptions for certain things, and because I wasn't in a COVID unit, and one of them was the difference between her being my girlfriend and her being my wife. If something was to happen, she wouldn't have the same protections, and I wouldn't have the same protections under marriage because she's my girlfriend instead of her being my wife. She actually had more protections as being a caretaker than as her being my 17-year-long girlfriend that I raised children with and have a household with. So I know it's quite aspirational, and I know it might be a long shot, but I believe that breaking down a barrier such as that would benefit our community, and not only our community, but also able community in a much more positive way. That's my ADA story, how it has affected me in the past and how I would like to make changes in the future.
Marcos, just hearing that about your experience makes me like want to go out and make a difference. I think that's what this call is about. Wow, that definitely gets my blood boiling. We're going to move on to our third speaker. Let's go to Kelsey Schuldis. Oh, Kelsey, we can't hear you. We can see you. We can see you talking. There you go.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, sorry, I was like, unmute. Okay, so as I said, my name's Kelsey Schuldis. I have been paralyzed from the waist down for the last almost 12 years due to a spinal cord injury. I am also going into my second year of the MSW program, Masters of Social Work program at ASU Tucson campus. And I consider myself an advocate for people with disabilities as well as a person with a disability myself. In terms of the Americans with Disabilities Act, sort of the way that it has impacted my life is just allowing me to be able to do life, to be able to get around town, to be able to go out and about. Obviously, you know, if you can't go to the bathroom, if you can't park, if you can't do those kinds of things, then you really can't leave your house. And, you know, even as it is, it's still really challenging. You know, we talk about, there's a lot of buildings in Tucson that are grandfathered in from, you know, having been built prior to the Americans with Disabilities Act, where, you know, there are certain places that I just don't go because I'm not comfortable being there because they're not accessible. And I think, you know, the fact that that's still a thing, even in our modern world, you know, it seems like it really shouldn't be. You know, and I realize all of the, you know, financial issues that that come up around trying to upgrade buildings and things like that. But I honestly think it's worth the investment, you know, to allow people to have a society where we are not saying, oh, you cost too much. You cost too much to go out in public. You cost too much to be able to be here, so we're not willing to spend that. And I think that is one of the major barriers that still exists in our culture, is that we sort of put a price tag on, you know, how much people are worth, how much their presence is worth, how much their lives are worth. And, you know, it can be really sad and discouraging when you come up against those barriers and you know, are basically told that you're not worth the money. And, you know, I think that's definitely one of the ways that we could improve accessibility is to be willing to invest in it, be willing to create programs that invest in accessibility for, you know, people with mobility barriers, people, you know, communication barriers, ASL interpreters. I'm always excited when I see the ASL interpreters, you know, when they're doing the coronavirus updates and things like that. I always get excited to see the ASL interpreters because it makes me so glad and feel so reassured that, you know, we are living in a society that has made those steps, even though you know we still have a lot further that we need to go. And in terms of how the pandemic has affected us, one of the things that I also do, I'm also an employee in a rehabilitation hospital. So, and I actually have been working with people who are recovering from the coronavirus. And I think that we, over the next several years, are going to see more people with disabilities who have become disabled because of the coronavirus. And, you know, being able to put programs in place to help those people, definitely being able to maintain the Affordable Care Act that, you know, allows people with pre-existing conditions to continue to get insurance, reforming our insurance system so that people can even afford to have insurance. And on top of that, just even the issue of, you know, who gets care. You know, one of the major concerns that I had going into this and still have is the idea of, you know, who does get care, whose life is worth investing in, you know, because when we talk about the pandemic and some of the issues that, you know, with having enough care for everybody, then we start asking, oh, well, are we going to give care to the elderly disabled person, or are we going to give it to the young person who's, you know, technically their life is more valuable, you know? Like it's so sad to see that. Like it you know, I've spent some time grieving that and crying over it because, you know, this whole idea that there are some people whose lives are worth less is just really frustrating and sad to see. And that's, you know, obviously it's hard to use policies and come up with policies to change that culture in our culture. So, you know, I would love to see more of that, you know, and I don't know, it always is encouraging, as I said, to see the ASL interpreters, to see people in media, to see people with disabilities, to let, you know, everybody out there know, you know, it's not just like sort of this abstract idea of people with disabilities, that these are real people and they exist and contribute a lot to our society. So that's my story.
Thank you so much for sharing, Kelsey. I put a link in the chat box going off what you said regarding, you know, who gets care. I mean, such an important topic right now. So thank you for sharing your insights into that. Our next storyteller is going to be Christy Abrams with the Arizona Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing.
All right, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? I'm actually going to I've been listening to you with a streamer, so I'm going to turn the sound off of that so I don't have an echo. Can you still hear me okay? All right, awesome. Well, good morning, everyone. I am Christy Abrams. I am the hard of hearing specialist with the Arizona Commission for the Deaf and the Hard of Hearing. And it's a privilege to be here today to share my story and to speak about how the ADA has impacted my life, especially in regards to communication access. You may notice as I begin to speak, I concentrate on my enunciation. Due to my severe bilateral hearing loss, I do not hear many sounds of speech. So I hear vowels well, but unfortunately I don't hear many of the consonant sounds. So many people, when they meet me, will say, where are you from? You have an accent. Are you from Australia or England? So that's always interesting for me to hear. But my hearing loss story began in the summertime between kindergarten and first grade. I became severely sick and was hospitalized with a dangerously high fever, And it may have been the fever or the virus or the medications that were given to me or a combination of all three that led to my hearing loss. Once I recovered, all was assumed to be well, and I was sent on my way to first grade. I remember sitting in my first grade classroom in the last row. I could see all of my classmates in front of me, and my teacher was standing in front of a big, giant, dark green chalkboard. And all of a sudden, I watched all my classmates open their little desk and take out paper and pencil, and they began to write. And I can still remember the feeling of being absolutely baffled. Like, how did everybody know how to do that except me? I had no idea what was wrong or what was going on. I just didn't know. The teacher, I remember, gave me a stern look and went on to share with my parents that I was always daydreaming and never paying attention. So finally, by the end of first grade, my family figured out that I was not hearing well, which was confirmed by a visit to an ENT and an audiologist. And I was fitted with 2 behind-the-ear power hearing aids. During elementary school, high school, and college, I became hypervigilant. I learned to become an excellent lip reader and concentrated intently on all the communication that was happening around me. I had my hearing aids, which was helpful, but they don't correct hearing like glasses correct our vision. I had no idea how much information I was missing. We don't know what we don't hear. I often felt invisible, misunderstood, disconnected, and exhausted. For the majority of my career in human services, I did whatever I had to do to survive. As is often the case with people who have hearing loss, I was not aware of my rights or accommodations that were available to me. Some of my past employers didn't see me as having a disability because I had hearing aids, I could speak and communicate. From my perspective, people have kind intentions, but don't always have all of the information they need. In truth, it's only during the past year that I've truly come to understand the significance of the ADA. Although this became a law in 1990, the year I graduated from college, I, like so many other hard of hearing people, just was not aware of my rights to request accommodations and have effective communication and equal access. Just this week, I had 2 different interactions with highly educated, kind, caring physicians who had never heard of communication access real-time translation, or CART, which is what we're using today to be able to read at the bottom of the screen. So that was really unfortunate. When I began at ACDHH a year ago, I really feel like I landed on planet home. Our boardroom has a loop system which connects with the T-coils in my hearing aids. And during meetings, my colleagues speak one at a time and use a microphone, and I am literally in the loop. We also use CART. It's a great example. I lead up our hard of hearing task force meeting, and I remember receiving the transcript from the CART provider for the first time. I was able to independently complete the minutes for the meeting. It seemed like such a simple task, but I could never do that before. I could never take notes before because when I look down, I can't lip read and everyone's voice disappears into kind of a distant muffle. So it was amazing. I had everything that happened in the meeting right there on a transcript. So 30 years later, I want to say happy anniversary ADA. I look forward to all of the additional progress that can be made. I look forward to physicians knowing how to support their patients with CART during medical appointments. I look forward to employers who will hire people with hearing loss and provide accommodations, whether it be an amplified telephone, a caption phone, whatever they need to have that equal access. I look forward to entertainment venues, all entertainment venues, having closed caption and effective listening devices so people with hearing loss can have access to the lyrics of their favorite songs. So we have a long way to go, and I can't wait to be a part of it all. Thank you, ADA. And that's my story.
Thank you so much, Christy. We are going to move on to Emmett Hassan, also from ACDHH.
All right, just getting the interpreter set up here. Here we go. Hello, everybody. My name is Emmett Hassan, and I work with Arizona Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. I've worked there for almost 15 years. It'll be 15 years this August, with Christy as well. We've had kind of similar paths, but I'm going to speak a little bit about my background now. I was born deaf, and so I have no idea what it's like to hear or to be a hearing person, so to speak. My mother raised me, and I'm the last baby of 5 in the family. So I'm the youngest, and I became deaf from rubella, and it had a large impact on the deaf population. It's how many people became deaf. And so my mother didn't know anything about deafness or sign language, and she requested the doctor's advice, who recommended I learn sign language, which I did growing up. And so I had to learn sign language, and I feel very fortunate for that, because there are a lot of hearing families who don't learn sign language. So whether it be at the dinner table or wherever, they don't have access to language. So I feel fortunate that I did have that privilege growing up. Actually, about 90% of deaf children are born into hearing families, and most of those families don't learn sign just because they're not willing, or they use a method other than sign language to teach their children. I was lucky because my mother was a model for me before the ADA was around. She was an advocate in requesting things like interpreters. And as a side note, I'm from Canada. And so it was a little bit different. And we finally decided to move to the United States because they had a better deaf education system. And I went to California School for the Deaf at Riverside. And I learned about how I could live in a world without barriers there. And I felt like it was really my home, my world. And there was a protest in Sacramento to fight to keep the deaf school open. There was a movement to close it. And so 2 years after that was when the ADA was signed into law. And I saw that on TV in my classroom, a whole class of deaf students realizing that their rights would be protected. And so there has been a lot of work in that time, a lot of improvements, access to accommodations and employment, captioning at movie theaters, all sorts of accommodations that we see today. For my work over the last 15 years, pretty much every day, not a day goes by that I don't get a call where someone's facing a barrier. People complaining about not providing interpreters or appropriate accommodations. And so as an agency, we're constantly advocating. And Representative Longden understands, because we've had a partnership with her, and so we appreciate her sharing her perspective. But the law itself is not enough. It's a beginning. In the legislature, we did get the loop placed in due to our partnership with them. We do a lot of public health and safety trainings every year all over the state, where we teach people about deaf people's rights, about deaf culture, and we try to help them understand the importance of those things, because deafness is an invisible disability. And someone else mentioned it feels a lot of times like people put a price tag on us. And so for a lot of times, disability is a one-time cost, but for people who are deaf, it's an ongoing cost, paying for interpreters, paying for captioners. So we're constantly having to fight for our rights to get those accommodations. So that's certainly an issue that we always face. I think the ADA can be improved in the future by emphasizing that education is key, that we really need to understand and to teach other people about it. One significant example is the Arizona Legislature. They tried to water down the ADA. It was about a year or two ago. There was a law about some fraudulent claims for ADA violations, and that really hurt us. And we need more people in the legislature to advocate for reducing those barriers and for improving those situations. I also wanted to mention, I know I just have a little bit of time left, but related with COVID-19, that has really impacted a lot of things for our community, such as wearing masks, So the hard of hearing community relies on lip reading, whereas deaf people rely on facial expressions, and masks impede both of those things. So we were proud to partner with Clear Masks and the Department of Health Services to provide 20,000 clear masks that we were able to distribute so that people can have more access to lip reading and facial expressions even when wearing masks. So that is one area where we are still working diligently. And so there are a lot of things that affect our everyday lives, but the ADA is the only law that the US has. It's one of the only kind in the world, and we can still improve, we can still make improvements, and I look forward to the day that we are considered the norm, that we don't have to fight for access, and that it's already a given. It's not an afterthought.
Thank you so much, Emmett. That was such a strong message and a great reminder that we can't give up on advocacy, especially at the local level. Thank you. We're going to go to our next.
Welcome. Thanks for the opportunity to join.
We're going to go to our next speaker, and that is going to be Oliver Bryan.
All right. Afternoon, everyone. I am Oliver Bryan, James Oliver Bryan, but I go by Oliver. I am a severe traumatic brain injury survivor. And given the deficits caused by my brain injury, like most, I will use notes to ensure that I stay on track and that I don't go down too many rabbit trails. Us brain injuries love to chase those rabbits, but somehow we can never catch them, so the chase continues. I digress. October 29, 2012, I was involved in a motorcycle accident just after returning home from serving 4 years in the United States Navy. I was asked to do a flag ceremony at the Arizona Cardinals Monday night football game. After the ceremony, I got on my motorcycle and went on a quick ride, going way too fast down a dead-end road. Unable to stop, I hit a dirt embankment and was thrown 35 feet, laying on my head. I sustained a severe traumatic brain injury, was on life support for a week, and a coma for a month, and spent the next 3.5 years of rehab learning to walk, talk, eat, think, essentially everything over again. During my rehab, I had the opportunity to be accepted and attend a prestigious neuro rehab program, CTN, and spent 10 months there. Given the injury, the severity of my injury, CTN was extremely hesitant in allowing me to try to pursue school again, but they allowed me to give it a try. Additionally, while at CTN, I met and aligned myself with a fellow survivor who was a seasoned businessman. And together, after graduating from CTN, we opened a cafe in downtown Phoenix called Oliver's Sophisticated Bean. I owned and operated that cafe for a year, then decided it wasn't for me and sold my portion of the cafe to my partner and decided to return to school. Highly motivated and ambitious, I applied and was accepted to honors college at GCU, the top 8%. I graduated with honors with my undergrad in entrepreneurial studies and decided to continue and pursue my MBA. I just completed my MBA this past March, completing the program in 10 months. Throughout my school, ADA accommodations were instrumental in not only my academic success, but the comfort and confidence it gave me in taking on and knowing I could complete the necessary coursework throughout my program. I'm sure many of you have heard with brain injuries, no two brain injuries are the same. If you've seen one brain injury, you've seen one brain injury. Throughout my brain injury, despite all the vast challenges and deficits, I have become and am my biggest and strongest advocate. In school, I've observed that many students will hesitate and be embarrassed to obtain and utilize those accommodations, typically feeling judged by other students. Conversely, I was proud of that. I knew this and would do whatever it took to be successful. I knew my challenges and I knew what I needed to do, what I needed to have to find success. So knowing and experiencing this, in conjunction with seeing other students with disabilities underutilize their accommodations, I am in the process of developing a nonprofit that aims to address this specific issue of underusing their ADA accommodations. My program, my nonprofit, will work with students instilling the tools, strategies, techniques, and conversations to effectively utilize those ADA accommodations. Just because you get a 2-week extension isn't going to do anything unless you know how to utilize those 2 extra weeks effectively and improve the quality of your paper or assignment. So my nonprofit will work with students, teaching them the skills to best extract the greatest value from those accommodations. I desire to work with, as I said, to work with students, giving them the skills and ability to overcome and achieve success within their academic journey. I truly am appreciative for this opportunity to share my story, to share how ADA has made a monumental impact in my life and allowed me to achieve so much, and to allow me to share my potential future in being a positive imprint in other people's lives along this journey. I thank you so much for the advocates who fought so hard to allow us to have a voice, allow us to feel like we can fight, we can play this game. Happy anniversary, ADA.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Oliver. Please keep us updated about that nonprofit for students. It sounds like it's going to take off and do wonderful things. Our next speaker is Katie Griffith. Katie, take it away.
Hi. My name is Katie Griffith, and I have a disability called cerebral palsy. The legal name for that is spastic quadriplegia, cerebral palsy. And it affects many people in certain ways. For me, it affects all 4 of my limbs. However, it does not affect your thinking or the way that you can express yourself. It can affect speech. And what I do for the community is I work for Ability 360 as a peer trainer. I was also the Miss Wheelchair 2016, and I'm currently the Miss Sparkles Supreme. And I would say that the ADA impacted me first by in 2005. And the reason why is because I was in school and I was bullied. But like most people would think, I wasn't bullied by students. I was bullied actually by the teachers. I was treated with very much disrespect. The teachers, I remember, called me the R word, which in that term is, for those that don't know, it's retarded. And I was degraded in all different ways, strictly by the teachers. And that's how I decided after I graduated in 2005, because this happened all through my high school. I wasn't able to get the help I needed to use the restroom. I remember there wasn't doors on the restrooms.
Katie, I don't mean to interrupt you. I just want to let you know that your camera is off, and I know you had it on earlier. So
Oh,
just
yes.
a heads up.
There
Sorry,
it goes.
so sorry to interrupt. You go for it.
And there wasn't doors on the restrooms, and I wasn't treated with dignity. So that's how I wanted to actually be involved in the disability community then. And then I became involved with the Ability 360 program. And now I work with people with intellectual disabilities to help with self-advocacy programs in the day programs. However, I still think that the ADA needs a lot more work because people would think that the restrooms are accessible, and they're not accessible. Still, there's been times where I've had to go to different restaurants in order to use a bathroom. There's still been times that I haven't been able to shut the door and had to leave the door open. One of the things that I think we need to do, especially as younger people, is to pave the way for the next generation to become powerful advocates and not to be afraid to speak up, and make sure that that's also in the education system as well. That was also one of the platform that I used as my Miss Wheelchair platform. And I just am very grateful for all the people who have paved the way for the ADA before me, and I appreciate everyone listening. Thank you.
Katie, you are such an amazing advocate. Thank you for all the work you've done in the community, and I know you're going to go on to do a lot more, so can't wait to see what's next for you. All right, we're going to hear now from Danielle Spirinick. And Danielle, you will be our final speaker, and then we'll move on to public discussion. All right, Danielle, take it away.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I want to start off by saying that I also have a TBI, so I will be referring to my notes so I don't go down a bunch of rabbit holes. My name is Danielle Scranic. I am Miss Gilbert 2020, which is a preliminary title to the Miss America organization. And I already mentioned that I have a traumatic brain injury. I want to start with where my story began, and it began in 2014. I was in Army basic combat training. I was finishing my training to be a military police officer. Unfortunately, during a military training, I landed directly on my head onto concrete. I didn't immediately notice any significant changes with my brain. In fact, I did not even go to the hospital immediately, even though I had lost consciousness. When I did arrive to the hospital several days later, they did do a concussion screening, and the concussion that they thought I had later turned into a traumatic brain injury. When I went home for the first time, I had trouble remembering who family members were. I had trouble remembering significant events in my life, such as who I went to prom with, passwords to email accounts, et cetera, et cetera. Eventually, my brain injury got to be so debilitating that I could not drive anymore because my vertigo would come into place often. Now that I've been able to go through this experience and overcome many of the obstacles that stood in my way of living a quote unquote normal life, I have found a voice within me to speak on behalf of the brain injury and invisible disability population. Since being diagnosed with a TBI, I have heard comments such as, I should be thankful that I have no physical deformalities, or that I'm making my disability all up, all of which, of course, are untrue. These comments have only been heightened since COVID-19. Though those with invisible disabilities are strong, this is a very uncertain time for all of us. As I know many of us value structure as we navigate this new life of ours. One thing I hope we can all focus on in the next 5 years is that we show more compassion and understanding for one another. I cannot tell you how much of a difference this makes when checking out at a grocery store or simply being out in the public in general. With the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act approaching, I am proud to say we have come a long way as a nation. But now that our country is going through so many societal changes, I hope that we can now speak on how we change the attitudes and perception towards those with invisible disabilities. This is a pivotal time in history, and we have made great strides in a multitude of areas in our society to become a more inclusive country. But I strongly believe that we have much more work to do with those with TBIs and many other invisible disabilities. We are calling on everyone that is listening to help us make those changes. I'm very thankful to be able to share my story with you all. The very goal I have, should I become the next Miss Arizona or Miss America, or even the future governor of Arizona, is to continue to educate, lead, and serve regarding those with disabilities so that we are a country that includes everyone, regardless of their disabilities or limitations. I want to end this with a quote, and that is, just because you have a disability does not mean you cannot accomplish great things. Thank you.
Wow, I'm like blown away, Danielle. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I am so glad that you brought up the structure piece of it. When the pandemic hit, all of our structure went out the window, and that is a really big deal about, you know, how we can continue to live healthy lives with or without disabilities. So that's a really good point. We do have one comment that one of our speakers would like to make, and that is Emmett Hassan. So Emmett, take it away.
Okay, sorry, we had to get the interpreter on the screen. I just had a thought before this portion ended. I wanted to add and just add a little bit of a historical tidbit. The National Agency for the Deaf, the Civil Rights, it's the oldest civil rights organization in the United States, and they were the first registered civil rights, and it was from I don't remember the year, but it's over 200 years ago, NAD, and they are still fighting for the rights of the deaf in the United States, even with the NAD, and even with the ADA. And so I just wanted to give you some historical perspective, how long that the NAD has been serving deaf people and their rights, and to helping to advance the cause. I just wanted to add a bit of history just for your knowledge. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to add that.
Well, great. And thank you, Emmett, for that. And thank you, Sarah, and all the panelists that participated in telling your stories about how the ADA has impacted your life. You are all fabulous. Appreciate your willingness to do that today. So I'm gonna turn this over to John Mcdermott and Jeff Javier, and they are going to kind of walk us through the public discussion and orchestrate this and give some of you an opportunity to share some of your stories too. So John and Jeff, it's yours.
Thank you, Phil, and thank you everyone for sharing your stories. we are going to open it up for public discussion, and we really want individuals to be able to share other stories or issues that they're facing. And we have a current lineup already. We have a couple people in the queue, and we're going to start with them. And then just as a reminder, if you would like to share your story, you can raise your hand and you'll come up to the top of our participant list. And then just wait for us to identify you and call on you. If you're on the phone, it's going to be a *9 to raise your hand, and then a *6 to mute or unmute. So first, I think we're going to start with Tony Therian, and we need to find her in our participant list, and we're going to unmute you and give you the opportunity to speak. Thank you, Tony. You have the floor.
Hi, can everybody hear me? Yes? Yeah. Okay. So I am the mother of a child with high functioning autism, or Asperger's is what we called it originally. But now he's just considered on the ASD spectrum, which I know right now isn't really included in the ADA. I am also a person who has severe chronic illness. I have an autoimmune disease that makes it so that I have to wear a mask in public a lot of the time. So I feel like everybody has joined my world now because I often have to wear a mask in public because this affects my lungs. So being that it affects my lungs, this COVID thing has been really scary for my family. Last year, I forgot to get a flu shot in time because I really have to get them in August, and ended up with pneumonia and was out for 3 months. So my children have to be extra careful. They haven't had the play dates, this, that, and the other. And so that's really hit our family hard because of my illness. And then my child with ASD also has ADHD and sensory processing disorder. So he is definitely affected by being stuck in the house. Unfortunately, he's playing a lot of video games to make up for it. But I wanted to say that the whole idea of an invisible illness really hits home for me, because my child does not look like he has a disability. He does not speak like he has a disability, but in the middle of Target, he might have a meltdown. And sometimes he gets aggressive, he swears, he does a lot of things because, you know, he can't let go of things. His mind kind of goes in circles. So I look like a bad mother. So I really would love to know if there is advancement in that area as far as including ASD, because I'm very concerned about when he goes into the workforce, what he's going to be able to accomplish. There will be accommodations that he will need. He needs quiet space. He needs not a lot of distractions. He can't work in a place where people are walking by all the time because he can't focus and he gets agitated. So there's a lot of things there that concern me for his future. On another note, to tie in the COVID stuff, I lost my job in April and have struggled to get unemployment because I had lost a job last year as well. And you know, prior to that, I was the director of a company that provided OT, PT, and speech to children with developmental disabilities. So I had a great job, moved to another place, COVID hit, unemployed again, really having trouble getting anything going with unemployment or anything like that, trying to start a web design business, but it's been really overwhelming. And I know that my children are overwhelmed with the idea that they have to stay in, and the idea that I'm not employed. As a single mother, they really understand at only 10 and 12 how that affects our family, as I am the only one who can make money in our house. Unless I send them around the neighborhood to mow lawns. But yeah, so our family's been hit very, very hard, emotionally, physically, mentally. This morning my son beat the crap out of his brother and I had to tear them apart because he's just agitated by the confinement and the lack of resources. His therapist also has an autoimmune disease, so refuses to see clients, and he doesn't do well with online sessions. So it's been a really tough deal. In preparation for this call, I was looking up, things about ASD and whether or not ADA covers anything, and it really doesn't look like it does. And I am wondering if anybody knows anything about whether or not that is progressing, if that's on the table, because most of the articles I saw basically said no. So I'll go ahead and turn it over. That's basically my story. Thank you, Erica, for inviting me to this. It's been a lot of really cool information. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Tony. And I believe we're looking into that, Sarah, right? And then now we have next.
Sorry, if someone has some insight on that, raise your hand and we'd love to get some information on that. We do have a few people next in line, but I am like, don't worry, we're gonna work on that, Tony.
Thanks, Sarah. And up next we have Elisa Mcdowell. I am going to unmute you now and you are free to speak.
Hi there. Can you see me? Let's see. Hi, my name's Elisa Mcdowell. I am a speech language pathologist. I specialize in working in skilled nursing facilities. My specialty is working with the elderly population. Occasionally, I also work with younger folks in their 60s and 70s who have had traumatic brain injuries, CVAs, heart issues. But mostly I work with our elders. So as many of you know, when someone who's 70, 80, 90, 100, if they fall, break a hip, urinary tract infection, any kind of infection at all, there's generally repercussions with their cognitive communication function and a lot of times with their swallowing function as well. So I work with helping folks improve on that. So first of all, thank you everyone so much for this. I feel so, what's the word? Like not alone, not alone. And grateful that there's some resources because one of the hardest things we are dealing with right now in skilled nursing is that because of COVID, none of our guests, none of our patients can have guests. None of them can have their family over. And as many of you probably already know, having familiar people around, having familiar items around, that is one of the best ways to overcome cognitive challenges that result from having gone under anesthesia or a traumatic event, or even just a UTI. So me and all of my colleagues have just been heartbroken seeing this loneliness. It's just devastating seeing our little Grammies and Grampies who are going through trauma. They're dealing with a broken hip. They're dealing with whatever the issue is, and they're alone. We're the only caregivers, so the only human contact they have are the nurses, the CNAs, the doctors, and the therapists. And of course, we therapists, SLPs, OT, PT, we are the primary folks who get to spend significant amount of times with these people. So I just feel so grateful that we do have the ADA and that our facility does provide speech services. Many of the facilities, speech therapy is one of the lowest on the rung of considered needed items. And we are the front line for communication. We are the front line for helping people know what's going on when they're confused and scared and alone. So I'm very proud of that I get to be a part of that. So one of the things that I've been just pondering in my heart is with the loneliness, communication is our gateway to each other, to society. And when you can't have that lip reading because you can't have any face-to-face interaction. No family members, no visitors are allowed. You don't get you don't get the face, you don't get the one-on-one attention. So I've been thinking about, wouldn't it be nice if there were some laws in place where facilities had to provide, I don't know, tablets or something. It's just, I don't know the solution. All I know is that my grandmas and grandpas are lonely. And they're going through this traumatic event all alone. And it's, it just is very scary. Another thing that I have thought about is, what's the word? Like training for caregivers. I just think it would be such a great thing if we could have family members go through a certain like COVID training or something, so that they would have the rights to visit their loved ones in the facilities. I'm not saying I disagree with the barriers we have in place. The more people in and out of our facility, the more at risk our clients are of getting COVID. So just maybe somehow some kind of training for family, one family member, one person who can get this training on hand washing and proper hygiene and certain periods of time. I don't know, but it's all new. It's new for us every day. In my facility, we're changing. There's a shortage of PPE. My environmental services gal is dealing with significant price increases. Like everything's more expensive now. She's having to buy things from other countries because she has a limit on how much PPE she can get. So, but anyways, my main concern is the loneliness. Just, it's heartbreaking. It's been very heavy for all of us to be there, to be the person. And I feel, I don't know, I'm just wanting to brainstorm, I suppose. So
Elisa, I think you totally hit the nail on the head. I mean, we've been talking about that a lot, especially here at the Planning Council for folks in long-term care settings. And so the tablet thing, the loneliness thing, I think we can definitely brainstorm about that. Jeff and John, I know you have a couple more people in line, but if you have resources, put them in the chat. We have a lively conversation going on there too. So if you have resources for Elisa and her facility, please link them right now.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, thank you, Elisa. I just missed a call from my stepdad inside a facility. So hopefully his assessment goes good today for daily living activities. Next, we have in the public comment, Daryl Christensen. So he's going to comment next. And then I think we have a couple more. We have Gary and Tehran. So we'll move from there. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, John. And thanks, everybody, for being part of this call. This is amazing. My comments are sort of from a historical standpoint, I guess, if you were. I remember the morning that the ADA was signed. I was working for the Center for Independent Living back in Minnesota. And our executive director at the time was just going crazy. Oh, they passed the ADA. Oh, they passed the ADA. And he was just bouncing off the walls. Well, if you knew Bill, he was bouncing off the walls if the handicap parking fine went up from $25 to $50. And so we just thought, well, that's just, Bill being Bill. We had no idea about the full impact. But that morning just stands out 3 years later. I think what we have seen over the years, what I've seen over the years is that our environment has changed a great deal in this nation over 30 years. We've done a lot with the ramps, the grab bars, the bathrooms that's been discussed. But the thing that we cannot legislate are attitudes. And Marcos talked about it, Danielle talked about it. We need to be out there and being productive, active people and being good role models to our community and to each other, because attitudes certainly are lagging behind the physical environment. I think over the years too, the disability community at one point separated themselves from the aging population and said, we're people with disabilities over here and you're folks who are seniors over here. But we finally seemed to get it together where we were a stronger voice, a stronger, powerful voice politically too, because we know too that seniors vote in great, great numbers. And so by joining forces, that makes the vote stronger. And in about 14 weeks, we have a huge election that we all need to be a part of. Certainly over the last 3 months, we've seen how race and ethnicity impacts folks with disabilities as well. Many people who are being shot and killed by police officers are individuals with mental illness who happen to be African American or persons of color. And so, joining civil rights are civil rights. And, it was great when Jennifer talked about John Lewis. That was not an able-bodied or disabled thing, but it was a civil rights for all Americans. And that's where the ADA, coupled with other laws and progress, has really made some changes. One experience that I had 2 summers ago was going out to Philadelphia and visiting the Liberty Bell. That was very interesting because it's now inside of a room, but it talked about the civil rights activities and liberty for all. And it showed about how the 60s had civil rights fights for African Americans and folks of color. And then it went on to talk about the women's movement in the 70s. And then maybe, I think there was like only one little piece that showed disability rights. And then it went to a lot about LGBTQIA rights now and trans rights. And I looked at that, my wife looked at that, and like, there was not much there concerning the disability movement. It was like a little blip in that time of all the civil rights, and that was discouraging for us. Couple other real quick things. A couple of days ago, I was on a phone call with retired Senator Tom Harkin, and he told the group about his brother, Frank, who has passed away. And Frank was an individual who was deaf. And Frank told folks that there's only one thing that he cannot do in life, and that was to hear. He knew that. There's only one thing he cannot do is hear. He said, everything else I can do because I've never tried it to know otherwise. So, we have to have the opportunity to fail rather than never having the chance to succeed. And that was certainly the way that Frank lived his life. So in the 30 years since the passage of the ADA, we've come a long way. If you took snapshots 1990, 2020, we've come a long way. But as other speakers have said, we have a long ways to go. Part of that is now advocating for the HEROES Act. We need to have more with the housing piece and such. Out of the 140-some thousand Americans that have died, 45% of those folks are nursing home residents. It is much more dangerous to be in a nursing home than in the community, and COVID has bore that out. And as well as now rationing the healthcare, like Kelsey said. So all in all, it's been quite a ride, but we have so much to get yet to do, and I'm so excited to be a part of this group with you. Happy birthday, ADA.
Thank you, Daryl, for sharing, for providing that historical context. I think now is a good time as any to cause that good trouble, I think. And now I will pass the floor on to Gary Karp. Please, Gary, you can now speak.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for including me here. And it's always great, first of all, to see the affirmation of the strength and the vibrancy of our community and how passionate we all are and devoted to the mission of moving things forward. I'm going to give a bit of a historical perspective. You can see I'm an old timer. I was injured. I injured my spinal cord in 1973 when I was 18 years old. So this was way before the ADA, even before Section 504. So at the time, of course, there were no parking spots. It was in Michigan. They were a little progressive and started a little early, but very few parking, curb ramps, and of course, I had to assume I wouldn't be able to find a bathroom when I went out in public, and so on and so on. And I went through a lot of back doors, up a lot of freight elevators. This was the nature of how it was. And, you know, like we do now, we did what we had to do. I was injured just before starting architectural school. And I arrived on campus to discover that the building where I was going to be spending most of my time, the architecture building, mind you, was a half level up and half level down. Steps everywhere, no level entrance to get into the building whatsoever. So, you know, what choice did I have? I wasn't not going to go to school. So the only possible solution was to start to get to know people and wait by the door and teach people how to carry me up and down those steps. And I did what I had to do because I was not going to be denied my education. But it also is what activated me as an advocate, because I did start to campaign with the campus administration. And I'm going to try, hopefully, to share a picture. Oh, I'm not allowed to screen share. Can I be allowed to screen share? Can somebody turn that on for me? Because I have a photograph of the building I'd like to share if possible. The process took 5 years, but I did accomplish getting a ramp built in front of that building and some lifts up and down the stairs on the inside. But it took 5 years, which is why I figured I'd stick around and do my graduate degree just so I could take advantage of what they had done. This was a private college. They were not required under any law of any kind to do this. So my main point here is that the world has gotten much, much better. For those of us who go back that far, I think we have a different appreciation for how extensive the scale of accessibility is now compared to how it was in the past. Obviously, and we've heard examples, there are problems still all over the place. But there are two main points that I'd like to make before I pass on to somebody else. A lot of the easy stuff has gotten done. So now we have a great deal of accessibility in hotels. I travel a great deal. After I graduated, I was a graphic designer for 11 years, but then I got involved in disability community, and I have written books and many articles and blogs, and some of you know that I've been out there, and I've been honored to be able to have a voice in this thing. So now we've got bathrooms, now we've got parking spots, now we've got curb cuts, we've got ramp buildings. You know, the difference between now and then is really, really considerable, even given the shortcomings that we're still working on, which means that the issues that remain for us are the harder ones. It's always the easier stuff that gets done first. But now we're dealing with the continuing problem of very little accessible housing, of people being essentially imprisoned in institutional settings against their will because of a matter of policy, and these kinds of things, which are much deeper, much more difficult, so requires more and more talented advocacy, more and more capacity to be able to sit down at the table with people in power and know how to communicate with them, to be professional, to be gracious, to be prepared, to be studied, to have solutions, to not just go and say, you got to fix this, but to be partnered and collaborative in the process. That is how a lot of this stuff has gotten done already. In fact, one of the points I make commonly when I speak in public is all of this accessibility didn't happen by the graciousness of somebody who said, oh, we have to do something to improve these people's lives. No, it was people with disabilities themselves. I always tell the Ed Roberts story. I talk about Judy Heumann and Justin Dart and all of these people and the rest of us who got out there, and me in my own way, just at my college, And we're the ones who made this happen because we were and are unwilling to be denied what our potential is in our lives, which I now think of in very American democratic terms. This is the pursuit of happiness. The pursuit of happiness is the pursuit of potential. And if we're denied the pursuit of our potential, then we are being constitutionally denied the right to live fully as Americans, you know, in this free country. The last point that I want to make is, I think, the ultimate barrier and challenge for us. Several have spoken about attitude. And my take on the matter of attitude is that people are kind and compassionate and generous on the whole. So when they hear a story about somebody with a disability or they encounter somebody with a disability, their first impulse is to respond from sympathy. And that, we have to remember, is a positive aspect of human nature, that they have that reflexive response to it. Of course, we also know that anybody who gets to know us well enough or spend time with us well enough understand that the last thing we're interested in is sympathy. The last thing we need is sympathy. So I think we have to do a better and better job of dealing with this problem where they see us through the lens of, oh, what if I were to lose whatever capacity like this person and have a disability? That produces a sympathetic response and a horrified response in a lot of people, right? And what they need to understand is what happens when it becomes your truth. It's no longer a matter of anticipating loss. It's now a matter of, who am I? How do I live my life? What are the resources that are out there that are available to me or I need to fight for? What do I need to learn? How am I going to go through a process internally of making the adaptation and adjustment? Because I am firmly convinced that we are all built to accept ourselves as we are. When you acquire a disability, there's a process to go through. But having met, so many of you and so many people with disabilities in this 25 years of the blessings of being involved in the disability community, I am completely certain that this is human nature. We are wired to adapt. We are wired to accept ourselves as we are. And that's why expressions of sympathy don't align with us. It's a disconnect for us because people are not understanding, thank you, but it was a long time ago. My life is about what I have done since and who I am, and my disability is a part of who I am. And the more we start to get that built into the broader cultural belief system across our society, and as Daryl said, the more we're out there, the more visible we are, the more we're making that case, I think that's a big piece of what has to happen, because we're never going to get the scale of policy and legislative support and corporate support and all the rest if they still see us through this lens of, oh, those poor people, what they have to go through, rather than, oh, these are real vibrant human beings that we need to invest in, who will make the most of that and contribute in society if we start getting smart about how we handle all this. So that's the gist of what I had to say. Happy birthday, ADA, and all my best to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. And thank you for your long time of advocacy. Thank you, Gary and Daryl. Thank you. We will continue to build on the foundation that you and so many others have built for us to continue to grow the ADA and to make it even stronger. So I'm going to pass it on now to our last public comment speaker, Ron Brooks. Please go ahead and
Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to speak. I'm not sure if I like being last, but I'll do my best. I live in Phoenix. I was born in 1967 back in Indiana, small town kid, growing up in a working class family. And when I was growing up, I had limited eyesight. It was very poor. I subsequently lost it when I was in my teens. But I was able to read a little bit as a small kid. And I remember being 5 years old in 1972 and sitting on my bed, waiting for the taxi. That's how I got to kindergarten. Waiting for the taxi for the afternoon kindergarten. And I remember reading this book called You Will Go to the Moon. And it was the most awesome book. It had pictures of the astronauts, and it showed the spaceship, and it showed the picture out the window that the astronauts saw the moon getting bigger and bigger. And I wanted to be an astronaut. That's all I wanted to be. I read the book every single day. And then later, I got very interested in being a pilot. And I guess, you know, with time, my dreams got a little bit closer and closer to Earth, and I ended up in public transit. And I always thought that it was an accident, that I ended up in public transit because the third world development theory thing and the international relations thing that I went to school for didn't work out, and my political science degree didn't work out, and I landed in transit. And 27 years later, literally this year, I was thinking about how I got here and why I'm here. And I realized that all along, this has been, you know, my life's mission has been to improve mobility for people like me who have disabilities, people who need transportation and don't have it. So that was really exciting because it made a lot of sense and it helped me understand. And I have to say that I credit my entire life's mission to having a disability, because if I didn't have a disability, I probably would have stayed in Indiana doing blue collar work, or maybe, you know, following my dad into the carpet industry, or, you know, who knows. But the second thing is the passage of the ADA, which really created some requirements and some opportunities to make transportation better for folks like me who truly, truly needed it. My first job was during the summer of 1990. I think I had some like paper routes and stuff before that, but my first job that actually, like, I got a real check with, like, you know, money, was being a summer intern for the Indiana Governor's Planning Council for people with disabilities. And I was there in the summer of 1990, which was the summer after I graduated from college and before I went to graduate school. And I had the opportunity to be on the phones, passing information to a grassroots network of advocates across Indiana that were advocating for the passage of the ADA, which I knew very little about. But I knew what I was getting from the people that were giving it to me. And this is back before internet and email. So everything was by phone. And I'd be calling people across the state and telling them, okay, the law's in this committee, and this senator is trying to get some weakening legislation introduced, and you gotta call your senator and tell him to vote no on the amendments and all this kind of stuff. And I had no idea what I was talking about, but it sounded good and it was exciting, and the law passed. And here I am 27 years later. I've spent my whole career working to make transportation better for folks with disabilities. I'm still doing that. It's still my passion in life. It's still what I do every day, and it gets me excited. I know I'm last, so I'm going to be quick. What I'd like to end with is just some observations of how ADA and accessibility has changed for me as a blind man, as a parent of 3 teenagers. The certain things in life are super, super challenging. They've gotten easier over time. But I want to talk about the joy that accessibility brings. The joy of being able to sit down when my kids were really little. We read every night, and I was able to take books out that were regular books that were modified with Braille so I could read stories to my kids. The ability to pull my phone out and use an app that is accessible. The ability to order food online and have it come to me, because before I would have to go to the store and get help. The ability to get in a vehicle and go somewhere. And, you know, these things vary. You know, some aspects of accessibility are better for me as a blind person. Transportation is easier for me than it is for somebody who needs a wheelchair accessible vehicle. There are some things that I think are probably easier for folks with disabilities who use wheelchairs. You know, there are ramps in many places, and a lot of those places don't have good accessibility for people like me who are blind. Other people have disabilities that aren't obvious, but they face discrimination in other ways. And the one thing that I would say is that we as a community need to remember that we are all in this. And there is a tendency for all of us to focus on the things we need to get by. I do it too. But we need to recognize that until society is accessible and inclusive for all of us, we're not done. And right now, in the transportation space, which is the thing I know best, so I'll speak that and then close. We're seeing a lot of desire to use some of the newer mobility models, things like rideshare, Uber, and those are fantastic for people that can use them. Now what we need to do is figure out how to help everybody have the same experience. And that is what I'm committed to. And whether it's transportation or shopping or reading or being accepted to college or you name the issue, we need to stay together and stay committed to outcomes that benefit all of us equally. So I love this workshop because it's given me a chance to hear from many different people from lives that I don't understand, that I don't personally experience. It's given me a chance to share mine, which is different than some of yours. And it's given us all a chance to kind of reconnect with why the ADA was passed in the first place, how far we've come, and how much farther we still have to go. So thank you so much for organizing this. I'm so grateful that I got to be here, and I will pass it back. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Ron. Appreciate that. Thank you, everybody from the public. Well, you know, we're coming up on the top of the hour. We wanted to conclude on time, but maybe we'll, if my team will allow this group to go over just a few minutes. I was going to say, I'd love to let JJ or Teresa, if they're still with us, to maybe say a few words really quickly. You're our legal people, and without our, without the folks in our disability law area, we wouldn't be making these. I mean, we wouldn't achieve the policy kind of issue. So JJ, maybe share a couple closing comments.
Sure. Thank you, everyone. And I know Therese had to jump off, and so I'll try to be brief. I know folks probably want to eat lunch. I know I have a kid knocking on the door. That's probably lunchtime. But let me just say a few words. So I'm JJ Rico. I'm the CEO for the Arizona Center for Disability Law. We're the designated protection and advocacy agency. I've had the honor and pleasure to dedicate my entire career as an attorney, the past 19 years, to advocate on behalf of people with disabilities. So prior to being a CEO, I was the staff attorney, legal director, and always used the ADA. I think I was even quoted in a New York Times article of saying using the ADA as a hammer to get access to allow someone to be an MMA fighter. And so we've talked about a lot of different access, and I've worked on a lot of different cases. And we may have represented some of you out there, and hopefully you had a good outcome. But I do think the lawyers, the advocates on the ground, all of you who've mentioned your lives and being part of the history of the ADA is what made that law come to life. But there are a few things, and I was charged with being inspirational, and I hope I don't come across negative, but I think we need three things. And this is my opinion, and we've shared what each of you all think we need. But looking forward to the next 30 years, even the next year, living through a pandemic has really exposed me that there's a long way we still need to go as a disability rights movement, as disability rights organizations, as people with disabilities. It's exposed that people with disabilities still are considered second-class citizens, and that's not acceptable. We need to change that. And the three ways that I think we can change that is we do need to file some more lawsuits. Some of you out there have been harmed, discriminated against, abused, neglected. We need you to come forward, and we need you to be the named plaintiffs of the future, so that we can say that we continue to have doctors' offices who don't provide effective communication. We continue to have people who are living in institutions that should be living in the place of their choice in the community. People are dying in congregate settings. They're not needed anymore. It's an antiquated way of thinking where people with disabilities, if you want to live in the community, you should choose where you want to live. So we need to enforce these laws. The ADA was created with that intention. I think some people think, well, lawyers are out there just suing everyone, and that's partially true. But when you have a civil rights law, the only way to expand that and to make that stronger is by enforcement. So that's one thing. Second, we need you all out there lobbying. We heard some stories about folks who are doing great work, calling their Congress people, lobbying on why disability issues are so important. Disability intersects in all areas of life. We've talked about housing, we've talked about employment, we've talked about access to healthcare, curb cuts, accommodations in education, both post-secondary education. So again, we need you out there telling your story. They can hear from me every day, but if they hear from you, their constituent, the person who's impacted by the proposed law, the proposed change, to actually affect negatively the ADA. They need to hear why this should not happen. Right now, we're about to hear a pandemic relief package that may have some immunity clauses in there. You need to contact your legislator and tell them that people should not be immune from lawsuits if they have abused and neglected a person with a disability while this pandemic is going on. So again, we need some of you out there. We need you voting. I think it was Daryl who commented on a big election come November. I think we all know about this election. If you're not registered to vote, I'm asking that I think we're going to put a little URL link there. The Secretary of State has given the Arizona Center for Disability Law a unique URL. Our challenge is to register 1,000 people to vote, and we're focused on the disability community. I think Judy Heumann, and there's a New York Times article that came out about just the really low rates of voting in our community. So we can exercise our right and exercise our voice through the ballot box. And if you encounter any barriers in doing that, let us know. We want to make sure everybody has that opportunity come this November and any other election. Obviously primaries are before elections, so get those in as well. And then last, with all of this, I think it goes without saying, we need activists. We need the people on the street. We need your voices. We need your stories. And that's what this really, to me, for the past 2 hours is what I've got. You all have what people need to hear. And that's what the ADA means, why the ADA was essential, why it should be expanded to include some specific provisions that right now it may not include, or why it may need to be updated. In 2008, there was an ADA Amendments Act. It's probably time for another amendment. We need to, in this virtual world that I'm living in and that you're living in, is ensure websites are accessible. The Arizona Legislature explicitly excluded websites. That's wrong. I mean, how do we order our food nowadays? How do we communicate nowadays? We talk about exclusion, being, remote. We need you all to say websites need to be explicitly written as a place of public accommodation into the law. Share those stories, share how you use, and if it's not accessible to you, share why it needs to be more accessible. So I hope it didn't come across negative, but those are 3 things. We need those enforcement, we need that litigation, we need you lobbying, we need you voting, and then we need you activists. You all are the champions of the ADA, and I've been proud to, for 19 years, be an attorney and represent many, many people with disabilities, and it's always given me joy to do this job because I know I'm not just representing one individual, I'm representing a community, and that community is out here today, and it's great seeing a lot of faces and a lot of names that I recognize, but next time around, we're gonna have even more than this, and I hope to see you out there. There will be a post-pandemic world, and I hope that we're all meeting up, maybe at the state capitol, maybe on the steps of the courthouse, but I know we'll see each other again. So again, thank you all for all of you who have contributed today and contributed to the ADA. You really mean a lot to me and to the Center for Disability Law, so thank you.
Great, thanks JJ, thanks for bringing us home. Couple final thoughts, conclusions. First, I do want to again thank our congressional delegation representatives that were here today, Giselle, Joe, Matthew, from Congresswoman Lesko's office, and Senator Sinema and Senator McSally's office. Thank you for being with us. As JJ mentioned, we want you all to register to vote if you haven't, but definitely vote this fall. Sign pledge cards to vote. We want you to do that too. We want you to, if you haven't completed the census, please complete the census. We need a complete count in Arizona for the census that's happening right now. And also, you can still participate in the hashtag thanks to the ADA. Take a picture of yourself with a sign saying how the ADA has impacted your life and post that to social media. That's a national initiative and it's a really cool thing, so you can still participate in it. Again, hashtag thanks to the ADA. And with that, I'm going to close it out and just say, hey, thanks everybody for being here. You guys were awesome. The stories were awesome. And happy birthday, happy 30th anniversary. Happy birthday to the ADA. And have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, everybody. We'll leave it open for a bit so you can scroll through the chat if there's resources you're looking for. Remember, this is being recorded. We'll have that available on YouTube soon. But we did try something new to give you an immediate tool to access this, and that is on Facebook Live. So check out any of our Facebook pages of the organizations who hosted today, whether that's Ability 360, Arizona Developmental Disabilities Planning Council, the ARC of Arizona, Sonoran USAID, and you will find a recording of our session that you can share with friends and colleagues and rewatch and contact folks. And we're just really appreciative of everyone. Thank you, everybody.